Jake Levine was.
You could do that.
We're recording?
As in me.
How was his French?
We're recording.
Supposed to be good. I don't understand.
Sounded French.
He spent a year in
We're recording?
Sounded French to me.
To me, too. Meeting will please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
We have Commissioners Berard, Fleming, Thunderbird, and Levine present.
This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. My opening remarks are just procedural. I'd like to get to the rates topic earlier in the meeting than is currently scheduled. So in order to move water rates up on the agenda, I'd like to defer item 9 on the regular agenda till after today's closed session. And we need to have item 11 precede item 10. So procedurally, I'd like to do the consent calendar, 11, 10, then recess to closed session, and then do 9. That constitutes my opening remarks. Report or briefing by the general manager, including reports from water, power, and administrative system management.
We don't have any today, sir.
Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations. Not till we get there. No comments. We have one public comment card, Barbara.
Yes, for item 4, it's Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, Sierra Club Water Committee, and a couple others. Basics. For the Department of Water and Power, I would highly recommend that you take some of an increased rate and allocate it to distributed water and power. That is, wouldn't it be nice if the 500,000 single-family dwellings with, say, 1,000 square feet of solar panels on them were distributed within the grid so that we could produce local power that would be probably there for a lot of emergency conditions and others. We also have an issue. The Sierra Club finally is supporting direct potable reuse. One of the big things is another 1,000 acre feet of water will be discharged into Santa Monica Bay today and tomorrow and every day thereafter. And we'd highly recommend that studies start. Hey, we're big enough, economy of scale and things like that, to have at least half of Hyperion go to direct potable reuse. That's only 200,000 acre feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Before calling on our ratepayer advocate for comments under agenda item 5, I understand we have a speaker card for this agenda item.
Yes, for item 5, there's Dr. Tom Williams.
Dr. Tom Williams, I'll defer item 5 until I hear what the ratepayer's going to have comments. If he has no comments, I have no comments. So, thank you.
Dr. Pickle?
On the consent agenda, we did review item 7, and we are comfortable with the trade-offs made by DWP, and we support this change.
Thank you.
We will have a few short comments on the rates and on item 9.
We would be disappointed if you didn't. Okay, we move to the approval of the minutes, agenda item 6. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 1st regular board meeting?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
They're approved. The consent agenda is short. It is items 7 and 8. Do any commissioners wish to remove either of these items from the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve them both?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, those are both approved. Okay, then pursuant to my reorganization opening comments, we will move to item 11, management report, overview of the industrial, economic, and administrative study.
So recently, the industrial, economic, and administrative study was completed. This is a charter requirement that is required every 5 years. The study is done by the controller, by the city council, and by the mayor's office. So we have Andrew Ray, who is the principal for Navigant, and he is going to give a presentation on the findings, and also Chuck Tooman from Navigant.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Andrew Ray. I'm a managing director with Navigant, and with me is Chuck Tooman, a director from Navigant. Our team led the IEA study on behalf of the controller's office, the city council, and the mayor. And we also, just so you know, Chuck and I led the team that did the previous IEA study, and we've led most of the rate reviews of the department on behalf of the city council over the last 7 or 8 years, including the current water and rates that are before you. So we have a fair amount of experience with the department. I'll just go quickly through some of the high points of the report, and if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. So some of the challenges facing the department, and most of these will be familiar to all of you. So in terms of external conditions, obviously increasing regulatory requirements on both the power and the water side, drought and climate change impacts, significantly changing the way people view how water fits into the total mix, more than just clean drinking water. It's all of the uses and sources of water. Physical and cybersecurity threats, and obviously you can read the headlines today to realize how important cybersecurity and physical security are for all of us. And then focus on the customer experience, a heightened awareness of the importance of serving the customer and meeting the customer's needs. Internal challenges include obviously aging infrastructure for both power and water and the need to upgrade and maintain those. Large capital programs that in the past have had a mixed record of implementation. Urgent information technology needs, obviously maintaining the financial health of the department, and siloed operations between the water and power systems and governance between the city and the department and governance inside of the department as well. This IEA was a little different from previous ones in that it had some very specific focus areas. So power infrastructure, what are the department's plans for upgrading and maintaining the infrastructure, and what are the challenges that it faces? Same on the water infrastructure. Governance, security and emergency preparedness, technology, customer service, community outreach and economic development, and then we also benchmarked the department's power and water rates. Some global findings, and these can all be found in the executive summary of the report. There's some really good news in this current IEA. You know, one of the things that the department has really improved on is its long-range planning on both the power and the water system, really bringing it up to par with investor-owned utilities, and in some cases exceeding other municipally owned utilities. So a real evolution from highly tactical responses to really strategic. And we think the integrated resources plan, the urban water management plan are really first-rate documents that set the department on a really good trajectory going forward. Noticeably a cut above from what we've seen in the past. We've also identified, so that I think is the most strategic thing. Obviously the department's done well in terms of meeting its RPS targets. It's going down the right path on energy efficiency and things like that. So there's a lot of progress. We also identified a set of global issues across the organization at LADWP, which can and are in some cases negatively impacting current and planned operations. And they include governance, and this is governance from the whole city perspective. We interviewed from the mayor's office through the council offices, union leadership, Mr. D'Arcy, sort of across the board, key stakeholders throughout the city, and asked what's working, what's not working. We benchmarked how the department is governed against other municipally owned utilities and looked at different governance models. The current structure, the feedback we got, has highly decentralized authority in terms of, so there's obviously the DWP board that has a certain amount of authority. Mayor's office has some, council has some, controller has some, CAO has some, the Office of Public Accountability has some. There is no one organization that sort of has all of the appropriate authority. Human resources, we found that the current city hiring process is not serving the department well and doesn't meet the utility's needs. The utility needs a human resources organization that's much more responsive and nimble. And in many cases, the hiring process, the training process, and the ability to staff were cited as an impediment to almost every program at the department. So we've laid out some recommendations, and I think the key is for the department to have its own human resources function independent of the city process. Metrics, trust, and transparency. So in the past, we think there's been a failure to clearly communicate key performance indicators on a regular and consistent basis. Doesn't mean that you haven't communicated performance indicators. It's, have they been the same? Have they been consistent? Have they been the right ones? And have they been broadly disseminated on a regular basis, not just when there's a rate request or an issue, but frequently. The role of the Office of Public Accountability. Obviously, this is a new office, and it's still going through some learning experiences. The OPA is functioning well, but we believe needs further refinement of its mission, including its level of authority and independence. Centralized controls and reporting. There's a lack of central authority and controls within LADWP, specifically with respect to finance, security, and emergency preparedness. We believe the organization would benefit from greater centralization and internal controls that establish defensible decision-making processes and higher standards of accountability. Siloed operations. The water system and the power system operate largely independently, almost as if they are two separate companies under one corporate umbrella. We believe there are strengths and weaknesses in both organizations and that they would benefit from much greater cross-fertilization and sharing of successes as well as sharing of learning experiences. Human capital. We recommend creating an independent HR group, as we talked about, but also looking at how you can recruit and select candidates in a different way than you have before to increase the number of outside professional hires that you have for highly skilled and technical positions where they could benefit in terms of large-scale capital project management, information technology, things like the CIS system, upgrades, and all of that. Program implementation at scale. So if you look at the capital requests that are in your current rate increase, you have huge capital programs that are complicated with lots of moving parts. And in some cases, you don't have the in-house talent to manage that large a portfolio and that much money in sort of state-of-the-art best practice ways. So we believe increasing your project management discipline, bringing in more outside professionals hired into DWP, not consultants, is the right way to go. Specifically to power infrastructure, you're entering a major transition period for the power system. Key programs are ramping up to achieve regulatory mandates, city goals, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, repowering the coastal plants, divesting from coal to meet the RPS standards in 2020, increasing local solar, and meeting the energy efficiency goals of 15% by 2020. These are huge undertakings, and not only do you need the financial support, but you need the human resources talent and the information technology and systems to support those efforts. We believe you're off to a great start. The 2014 Integrated Resource Plan is a robust planning document, and we believe the best integrated resource plan the department has produced. The main concern we have for the power system is the challenge of implementing that large scale of a really sort of reinvention of the power system in such a short period of time. In the past, DWP has had difficulty ramping up some programs, and we believe the current goals are ambitious for them to be successful and for the department to be a good steward of the citizens and city's money, we believe upping its project management goal capabilities is important. Some of our key recommendations, and when you hear about the water rates in a few moments, some of these we're really pleased to report the department has already adopted. But to regularly report on progress against the plan using key performance metrics that are tied to the rate ordinance, and look at ways to improve the hiring process and hire more project management professionals. Quickly on to the water infrastructure, and it's a similar story. The water infrastructure programs are ramping up to maintain system reliability, to meet regulatory mandates and city goals, reduce per capita water consumption by 20% by 2017, which is only now a little over a year away, reducing water purchases by 50% by 2025, and increasing local water supplies. Really significant goals. And one of the things that you'll find over and over again in the water part of the report is a lot of credit to how the water system has managed itself in very difficult times. And it's easy to read in the local media when a water main breaks, the department's not doing enough. But if you look at the issues that it's facing, they are Herculean in nature. You look at the age of the pipe stock and how much has to be replaced in a very short period of time, and all of the environmental compliance issues they have. We believe the department is really doing a really first-rate job on the water side. Doesn't mean they don't have challenges, but we wanted to make sure they got credit for where credit is due. The water supply, storage, and demand management strategies are sound. The water system has improved its asset management, still needs to finalize its plans, especially given the extent of aging infrastructure, but we do believe it's on the right track and the intent is going in the right direction. Water infrastructure replacement rates are improving. Not fast enough over the long term, but it's again a difficult challenge, and we do believe they're doing what they can, balancing the amount of money required to do this and the amount of human capital required to do it while maintaining a safe system. It's a balancing act, and I'm not sure anyone has that perfected, but we think the department's current plans and execution are sound. Right now, the plan is still for a 120-year cycle of replacement. Some people in the industry will tell you 60 years is best practice. So getting from 120 closer to 60 over time is obviously, I think, a goal that the department would like to adopt, and we would certainly support. Key recommendations here are to accelerate hiring, implement a broader outsourcing strategy, and redesign the procurement process. Moving on to governance. So governance was not originally part of the scope of the IEA, but was added after numerous conversations with key stakeholders throughout the city and the customer community and in labor, made it clear that changes should be included in this report to look at how changes could be implemented and what those changes would look like. The governance study provides history on the structure of DWP in Los Angeles. It identifies challenges currently facing the organization and reviews a number of alternative structures that exist in other municipal utilities. And there is no perfect formula, and we talk about that in the report. And if the city does adopt governance changes and it does evolve, you really have to study carefully what will be right for LA and how do we get LA right given all the complex politics and needs of the city. We don't make a specific recommendation for any one governance structure because this would require much more stakeholder engagement than was possible during the time frame of the IEA. We do recommend a long-term process for approaching change, which involves a multi-stakeholder group conducting further study and outreach to ultimately propose a ballot reform measure. The report's quite specific. It lays out a process that would get you to a ballot measure by 2017. The stakeholder group is very broad, and one of the things that we think is absolutely imperative is that IBEW and potentially other unions play a key role and be members of that, as well as all of the other key stakeholders in the city family, customer community, and the business community. One of the more experimental ideas that came up during the government study was for the city to look at optimizing its water resources by bringing together all of the water agencies in the city and the region potentially to put them under one management structure. Again, we don't opine whether that should be all housed in DWP or housed in a new organization, but we do recommend that the City Council instruct the CLA and the CAO to do a study of what would a unified city water resource approach look like, how could it be accomplished, and what are the benefits and detriments of that. Security and emergency preparedness. The world we live in has changed dramatically, and we all know that. And we believe that the department is progressing towards compliance with security reliability standards. But in short, we think there is more than it could do, particularly in terms of having greater centralization of authority, accountability, and responsibility for both cyber and physical security. That will allow greater responsiveness, greater attention, much more focus than we believe is currently in effect. On emergency preparedness, DWP certainly has policies for emergency preparedness, but evidence of routine training and consistent exercises is lacking. We believe completing an Office of Emergency Management strategic plan and making emergency preparedness consistent between the Power Division and the Water Division are first steps in that direction. The department doesn't have a business continuity management program defined by rigorous business impact analysis or set of disaster recovery plans. We believe all of these are not only required documents, but part of a discipline that's needed for security. Technology infrastructure, we found the IT division is performing well in most areas. We're looking really independent of your CIS implementation issues here. You've heard enough about that. There's enough studies underway. So we didn't focus on that. So in other areas, the performance is, I think, acceptable. Its biggest challenges are with its outdated and dispersed software applications and the lack of a fully developed strategic plan and IT architecture. There are a number of large IT application projects in the pipeline, and it's critical that you have effective project management, appropriate recruitment from the outside, well-documented plans, and very key performance metrics. And that'll become more important as the rates, benchmarking, and metrics go forward, because that's one of the areas that are tracked in the metrics. Key recommendations here include developing the strategic plan, extending project management practices, improving hiring and outside contracting. Customer service. And customer service is obviously an evolving area for the department, and one where in the past the focus on customer service, I would say, is different than you would have found in an investor-owned utility and different than you would have found in some municipal-owned utilities. When we benchmarked the performance and we used standard industry customer service benchmarks that we would expect any organization to be able to report on, we found that in the 2014 performance metrics were largely in the third or fourth quartile. First being best, fourth being the biggest areas for improvement. Specifically, there's a lack of clarity around the roles and responsibilities of key tasks that involve customer information, communication, and technology groups, and ITSD. Current staffing levels of these organizations have restricted the pace of the customer information service remediation. And the CIS remediation has also, I think, diluted the focus of the department. It's one thing to work on that system. You also have a huge number of customer touching issues that you need to focus on as well. The CIS has become such a dinosaur or elephant in the room. It's difficult for you to focus universally across the board in all the areas you need to. Key recommendations: improve data management practices, draw a clear line between customer service and IT responsibilities, address the staffing needs, and create a strategic plan for customer service technology, and really take a fresh look at your whole sort of customer-centric outreach and how you touch the customer. I think in the interest of time, The rates benchmarking is in the report. I'm not going to go into it too much. I think we feel the department is sort of where it should be. You're no longer the lowest against, depending on which panel it's used. You certainly compare well against some of your similarly situated peers. In some cases, your rates are lower. In some cases, your rates are higher. But we don't really think that's the point. If you look at the tasks that the department has before it, what it has to do, the challenges, we think the rates are adequate, and if anything, on the low end. Given what you have to do, as long as there's confidence that you can manage the task at hand, rates need to increase for you to do what you're going to do. So I think this is self-explanatory. Any questions on the rates benchmarking, we're happy to answer them. And that's a quick summary of the report. Any questions that we can answer for you?
Thank you very much. Commissioners, questions, comments? Commissioner Broad?
I wanted to commend you. I think this is really very comprehensive, covers a lot of areas, goes into our priorities, and I think one of our absolute top priorities is customer service. So I was very interested to hear how you've kind of bifurcated the more technical and then how we actually touch the customer and how we speak to them, because I think that is so important. And did you find in your study that our customer service, which I believe is now really improving dramatically in the last 2 years, but we have a long way to go, do you find that is holding us back? I mean, where do you see that kind of in the scheme of things?
I think it's similar to other challenges you face in the power and the water, which is you're going, from here to here in a very short period of time. And I think in the past, my experience has been, going back several years, the department was not what I would call the most customer-focused entity among the utilities of similar sizes. And I think you're trying to change that. And I think it's akin to, trying to steer an aircraft carrier in a very small body of water. It's difficult to turn around quickly. It's not nimble. And to have a truly sort of reinvention of the customer experience, you're probably going to need to increase the number of people you bring that have that experience, that didn't grow up with how it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And so I think, similar to the other things, increasing the sort of fresh perspective that you get, being able to separate the customer experience from the technology is absolutely key. The two link, and good technology can make the customer experience so much better, but you still have to have people who are trained in the right way. It has to be the first priority, right, which is making sure that people have the not only safe and reliable service, which has always been, I think, a priority for the department, but also a really pleasant customer experience. And that's a big change, and so I think it will take you time.
Yeah, well, I know one of the things that we've done is change the menu when people call in. Why do they have to wait through 22 things to say they have an emergency? Now it's right at the top, and that's a big issue for people. Yeah.
I mean, I think the most refreshing thing in this area is everyone we talked about the customer experience. When we've done previous studies, either rates or IEA related, the customer really didn't get mentioned. And so the fact that they're part of the conversation now is a really healthy step. And it's the first step in the right direction.
Right. I wanted to also comment on the governance, and I thought it was interesting that you're not making any recommendation on that. Very political of you.
Thank you.
Because when you look at Los Angeles and how complex our political structure is, then who would you cut out? That's a rhetorical question, but also a question.
That's good. No, it's a huge challenge. I think the first thing is the fact that everyone we spoke with said we need to change. That's a really positive sign. I think people also recognized it's really complicated. We looked at the SMUD model, obviously, as one of the ones that we talked about. And we spent time with SMUD's general manager, and we did a lot of research. And you could say a lot of good things have happened with SMUD's governance over the past few years. But if you just said, well, it works in Sacramento and tried to drop it here, it would probably crash without some other accommodations. And so one of the things we realized is exactly what you said, which is there's so much involved in doing this. And what you don't want to do is set it on a new path and make it worse than it is, right? So to get it right, we really think you have to bring all the interested people together, but in an expedited, streamlined way so that you can get to a decision. But it is complicated, and politics play a larger role here than in many of the other cities that we looked at. And that's partly because accountability and responsibility is so diffused, everybody can weigh in, but nobody can decide.
Well, when you look at SMUD, it's such a smaller universe that really,
Yeah.
it's in that way, it's not really analogous to Los Angeles, which is.
From a size perspective, it's not, but from an issues perspective, we looked back over their history, and they had many of the issues that you had, even when they were a utility board. But then they began to change the relationship between the general manager and their board. They came up with very specific, almost a contract. The utility will do this. If it does this, we're going to fund it, hire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so in many cases, the board then removes itself and says, okay, we're checking on how you're fulfilling the contract. You're fulfilling the contract well. We'll keep funding you. We'll keep hiring, all of those sort of things. Regardless of the size, some of those elements of very specific performance targets. The other thing that they did that we think is absolutely essential for management stability is the general manager has an employment contract. So, and one of the benefits of that is you don't just fire people with expensive employment contracts every 12 months or 18 months because it costs you a lot of money to do that. So they have begun to achieve management stability. And one of the things we talk about in the IEA is the department needs management stability. Regardless of whether it's Marcy sitting here or anybody else, you want consistency in the leadership positions as part of the department's evolution. And so I think there are a lot of good things to learn from SMUD. I agree it's small, and it's why we didn't just say adopt the SMUD model, because it's not a one-for-one fit. But there's some great things to learn from it.
Did you look at all at a commission that was a full-time commission?
Yes, sort of more like a mini public utilities commission overseeing. Yes, and I think there are a lot of advantages to that. Or, another model on that is having a board like yours, but full-time professional staff that reports to the board. So when the board wants work done or analysis done, it has a full-time resource who are professionals in the area that works for it to help advise it. So you get some independent view from having the very capable people in the department advising you. You have your own staff to supplement that.
That's interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments?
I did have a few comments, and I think that the report and the work that your firm's done has been very welcome on my part, particularly in informing me about the work that other utilities have done and how we stack up against them. In connection with the economic development and community outreach, which nature couldn't hold on to me and allow me to listen to the balance of your presentation, but it sounds like you went through it. I just wanted to see if you had looked at benchmarking or looking at indices related to equity and inclusion that DWP has, and as well as community outreach. We have every city's different. San Francisco has their democratic clubs, and different cities have their different ways of organizing neighborhoods. We have our neighborhood councils, which are pretty much in their infancy right now. They're just got off the ground in the past 10 or 15 years, and some of them are just starting to find their legs. Some of them, even the biggest ones, are just starting basic things like sustainability and green committees. Were you able to look at, in your study, any ways of recommending that we benchmark our performance in terms of engaging the neighborhood councils, number one, or meeting the three legs of the equity stool, employment, procurement, and project siting, in any more way than just general recommendations, but how are we doing on equity issues compared to other utilities? And I say that also from having had discussions with other a handful of discussions with other utility executives in San Francisco, Sacramento, Austin, and other places where these issues have arisen and the boards have dealt with them and various governing bodies have dealt with them in different ways. But I just wanted to know if these other utilities have ways of measuring these things that seem to be important. They also cross over, I think, with the customer service, because I think that an engaged customer base is going to give us higher ratings. That concludes my comments. And if you have any comments on that, that would be great. And on the customer service, it said that most 214 performance metrics. My colleague, Commissioner Barad, talked about the improvements. This says third or fourth quartile. Have we improved since 2014?
So we didn't have the data. We don't have the sort of next tranche of data, which is why the 2014 period. So I could only give you anecdotal information, and probably best not to do that. I think when you talk with people in the department, they think it's getting better, but we don't have the same rigorous benchmarking data to support that.
Mm-hmm. Because my understanding is our call wait times, at least, have gone down.
That I do believe from all the conversations we had is absolutely true. Yes.
Right.
Chuck, do you want to talk a little bit about the economic development piece?
Yeah, I'm happy to. In both economic development and community outreach, as you can imagine, we asked for current strategic plans, current sets of metrics, and benchmarks that the department utilizes to execute both of those programs. In many instances, what we were provided were outdated strategic plans, a limited set of metrics, and similarly not current reporting on a wide variety of different types of metrics and benchmarks that could show the effectiveness of both of those programs. You mentioned City of Austin. There are others that have a scorecard in both of those areas that are quite comprehensive, updated in a routine fashion and provided to you among many others in the community. I think in our report we recommend updating those strategic plans. I believe in the case of economic development, the last plan we saw was from 2011. So we recommend an updating of both plans, strategic plans and economic development, community outreach, a more comprehensive set of metrics, and the ability to report on those metrics in a routine fashion.
And what would you consider routine, quarterly, semi-annually, or what?
I would say for some it would be quarterly, semi-annually for others, but that would be determined looking at the metrics that matter to this entity among others in the community.
And issues of economic development sometimes get conflated with other equity issues, and I kind of want to tease that out in terms of this discussion. Can you comment on that, on the other equity issues in terms of taking care of underserved and not reached communities, reaching out to them, innovative ways that other utilities have executed on doing that, how we compare in doing that?
I think to the extent that the department has identified the desire to reach out into underserved communities, what we found is that there haven't been programs put in place to do that. It has a desire to do that, but it has not done it as effectively as other entities.
And is that because we lack the funding or because of the labor issues?
I think it's partly a focus and consistency issue. I think economic development priorities go up and go down, right? And it depends on the current political administration at the city. It depends on the city council priorities. It depends on your priorities. And if you look at, an investor-owned utility that's regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, there'll be a proscripted set of economic development goals, programs, systems, and they're monitored and they're tracked. And what we find is if something's monitored and tracked and authorized in rates, there'll be a focus on it, right? And there'll be organizations that are set up to support it and a whole sort of infrastructure that grows around it. And you, quite frankly, lack that, right? And so I think to make it a priority, you would almost have to do with what you've done with regulatory compliance, whether it be RPS goals or energy efficiency goals or Clean Water Act goals, you'd have to apply that type of focus to it, and we haven't seen that in the past.
Following on to that, I think what we would say is that the planning effort seems to go in fits and starts, as was just mentioned. And so we believe in these areas, among many others in the administrative infrastructure portion of our report, that the planning and the program administration should live on irrespective of the changes.
In other words, systemic changes.
Correct.
Okay. That's. Thank you very much. That was very helpful, and that will help me in the coming year.
Other commissioner comments, questions?
We do have one speaker
I
card.
was just going to ask that we have one speaker card. Do you want to call that speaker up?
Okay, the speaker is Dr. Tom Williams.
Good morning. Dr. Tom Williams, Sierra Club, and others. Thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
About 2 or 3 years ago, I asked for an organization chart for this organization because it didn't have one. It's still basically the directory down on the basement floor that tells you how it's put together. So we're quite concerned about how it's put together, especially when a rate increase is being requested. One of my comments is, will it be enough? Because they seem to have a lot of needs and very little performance. Case in point, outreach. Pico Union, it was one of me and 15 DWP people. 1 to 15. Some of them didn't even make that. Is that efficient? Does it represent something like the customer service? Oh, 1 customer, 15 people. Hey, that's not a bad ratio. I kind of like that. So we're quite concerned about how this will be implemented through this board. And recommendations, are they clear enough to really reorganize this? Because one of the fundamentals that I've seen is you have over 7,000 miles of water pipes. Does that indicate something to me? It's a big project. It's a big function. We had to deal, in Cairo, Egypt, we dealt with $6 billion worth of construction. I said, divide it by 9 million people. Oh, that's different. So we're, from a professional standpoint, I had 40 years with Parsons and others. And, the project management sucks. The biggest thing is, though, in the background is, it's a big project, and the people don't act like it is a big project. This is the 21st century. Where's the TV cameras? We have one. Where's the online videos of this?
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Where
you.
are we going? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Very, very helpful.
Just one comment in closing, because I should have mentioned in the beginning. We couldn't have done this without the department's cooperation, and we've done lots of reports for not only the city of Los Angeles, but for other organizations. And I would say the support we got from the department and the openness and the candor was exceptional. And I'd like to thank Paul Wang and Jeff Peltola, who were sort of our principal contacts for what we consider to be really sort of a casebook example of how to do something like this. So our thanks to you guys.
That's not surprising, but very nice to hear. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Barbara, before moving to item 10, did you have a clarifying comment?
Yes. For item 10, for the resolution, that the last whereas in the clause in the resolution on the first page to adopt the proposed water rate ordinance has been revised to read as follows. Whereas the proposed ordinance is expected to provide the revenues necessary to enable LADWP to cost-effectively borrow over $4.2 billion of the $5.4 billion needed to invest in the required capital projects by leveraging today's historically low rates and by maintaining LADWP's AA bond rating.
With that, we will move to item 10. I understand we have 12 speaker cards, so why don't we begin with the 12 speakers?
Okay. The first speaker is John Howland.
Good morning. I'm John Howland with the Central City Association. CCA is a business advocacy group representing over 450 businesses employing about 350,000 people, primarily in and around downtown Los Angeles. And our sister organization is the Downtown Center BID, a coalition of 1,700 property owners around the Central Business District. DWP staff has made 2 presentations to CCA members, along with some of our BID members present, on the proposed rate increase. First was in July. This was with a follow-up in September. A total of about 60 to 65 of our members present. Marcy Edwards led the discussion on both occasions and was accompanied by Jeff Peltola. David Wright, Marty Adams, Neil Guglielmo attended at least one of the meetings, and Dr. Pickle was present at both. They spent about 75 to 80 minutes at each meeting presenting plans and answering numerous questions. Also, working along with Jeff, Neil, and George Chin, we had DWP staff run assessments and discuss the potential impacts of the rate plan, of the increased rate plans, with approximately 18 of our members who have large footprints but do not have specific DWP service representatives. So, based on those presentations, let me say, no one likes to pay more. But vital water infrastructure maintenance and improvement projects have been delayed too many times. We can no longer push this down the road. CCA supports funding the needed water infrastructure work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next speaker is Susan Rayson. Rayson? Did I spell that right? How about Rasion, last name? Rascone?
Rascone.
Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Sarah, thank you. Good morning, afternoon, Water and Power Board Commissioners. Sarah Rascone here, Public Policy Manager with the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. The LA Area Chamber has over 1,600 members, representing over 650,000 employees throughout the LA region and spanning over 35 industries. I'm here today to share that LADWP has engaged the Chamber and has shared educational information regarding their proposed rate increases, and we very much appreciate the staff's proactive efforts. DWP's General Manager, Marcy Edwards, and senior staff have conducted extensive research in an effort to make individuals and business community aware of the proposal that would impact them, while making themselves available to answer questions and offer transparency to the allocation of the rate increases. On behalf of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, we thank LADWP for its collaborative efforts in engaging the Chamber and its membership. Although the Chamber has yet to take a position on the rate hike, we look forward to hearing more detail about the proposal before it goes to City Council and continuing to be engaged throughout the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Jessica Goodhart, and after that will be Benjamin Bunoff.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Goodhart. I'm the project director of the Repower LA project at the Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy. We had a couple speakers here last time to report back on a meeting that we had in South LA with senior management of DWP. I want to thank you again for coming out and talking to over 120 folks who turned out to listen. I just wanted today to sort of underscore, we submitted also a letter, and I just wanted to underscore a couple of points that were in that letter that were really, for us, kind of laid out a kind of an equity and good jobs agenda for the DWP that we'd love to see you embark on over the next few years. And just the two points I want to lift up are actually very relevant to the previous conversation, which is that as utility rates are rising, water and power rates rise, we really want to make sure that you're looking at the impact on LA's most vulnerable communities, and that's a lot of Los Angeles. 40% of our residents live below 200% of the federal poverty line.
And so I think some critical pieces are that we need to make sure that for the programs that do exist, that people know about them. And so community outreach is really critical. I know there are a lot of people who are eligible for the low-income discount program, tens of thousands who are not currently enrolled, for example. You've made great strides with energy efficiency and sort of reaching hard-to-reach customers over the last year. You're moving forward on solar equity, that we're pleased to see that. And then finally, we'd also like to see, in addition to the outreach piece, some regular reporting on a set of equity indicators so we can know how we're doing and make improvements as time goes on. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Benjamin Boomoff, and then after that, Tony Wilkinson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you very much. It's Ben Benumoff of the Krause, Kalfine, Bennick & Slavens firm. We represent Jeff Palmer, who's a Los Angeles real estate developer, and his company GH Palmer, and different multifamily dwelling complexes that Mr. Palmer owns. In particular, one of them, the more commonly known Lorenzo Apartments over by USC. The reason we're here today is to comment really on some very high-level issues that affect GH Palmer and its residents. With respect to the multi-dwelling rates, the proposed rates are a two-tiered structure. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Under Prop 218, fees cannot exceed the proportional cost of service to the parcel. Now, while parcels can be grouped together if they are similarly situated, and under Prop 218 that would seem to mean in terms of the cost of service, because what else could it mean? Well, with the current proposed structure, what is happening is you have a very heterogeneous mix of water users. You have some that use as little as 5 HCF per billing cycle, and some as many as 1,000. And so what happens, because the rate structure does not allocate fixed costs proportionally within the class, there's a subsidization that conflicts with Proposition 218. So GH Palmer, which is a large property with 1 meter and hundreds of residents, ends up paying a higher share of the fixed cost within that class. When that is then compared to the single dwelling residential customers, which have a completely different threshold for the allotments and moving from one tier to another, what you find, I'll be just 5 more seconds, what you find is that you have single family dwelling customers that use a relatively high amount of water paying less for that water than you do multi-dwelling residential customers who use less. So
your time is up, sir.
I have a comment letter that I had previously submitted to the commissioners, but I'd like to just in case it didn't get to you, here's another one.
Okay, the next speaker is Tony Wilkinson, and after that is Dr. Tom Williams.
Tony Wilkinson, I chair the Neighborhood Council DWP MOU Oversight Committee. And speaking as chair of the committee, I do want to say that we've watched this process. It's now been a long process since last July. And while we were anxious to get reports from the ratepayer advocate, I do want to say that being able in the MOU to see the process behind the scenes, there are some real improvements in this rate proposal, thanks to the input from the ratepayer advocate, including specific metrics, performance metrics reporting, and a midpoint correction that will allow your commission to determine whether or not the rates are adequate at the midpoint. And I think we have, unfortunately, all of us together have not done a very good job of telling the public and ratepayers about the success of these changes, but I think that they've been very exciting. I want to speak briefly as an individual because the MOU only supports, advocates for transparency. But I personally think that the department is like most families today. We used to have some discretionary income, but now the paycheck is allocated when it comes in. With the requirements for infrastructure changes and replacement that we have to do and the government mandates, I personally believe that this paycheck If it goes forward and is approved by the council, every bit of it is going to be allocated just like that homeowner's paycheck when it comes in. I am really actually concerned the department gets less and less flexibility through the 5-year period in terms of unexpected expenses. But I personally support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Dr. Tom Williams, and after that, David Garden.
Dr. Tom Williams, Sierra Club and others. Long time ago, I had to do a project. One part of the project was life cycle costs. The other one was ability to pay for Cairo, Egypt, the water supply. Why are we asking for so little in the rates? A 100-year replacement cycle for water pipes is standard of the industry, I think. We're still now, with all of this, at 200 years. That is, every year we might replace 200,000 lineal feet. However, you need to be replacing 400,000 lineal feet each year. I do not believe the rates as proposed are sufficient to deal with consumer relationships, outreach, and simple little things like replacing the 2 bare wires that I have serving my house. They haven't sparked yet, so I don't complain. But transformers, telephone and power poles, and water pipe. What are we asking for? Hey, bring it up to some sort of industry standard. And based upon what we heard this morning earlier, you ain't there yet. And these rates won't get there. So I would highly recommend, number one, a pledge from the board not to approve any further rate increases beyond what is provided here through your tenure on the board. Because I think we're going to be just the beginning of it. Bait and switch, that comes to mind. So I would highly recommend that you reconsider it. Take what has been proposed, or at least considered today, and add to those rates, maybe for year 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I personally was here a long time ago when you were projecting gas rates.
Your time is up, sir.
So much per cubic meter, sorry. It's not enough. And I think you're going to be approving more rate increases. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is David Garden, and after that, Danilo O'Dare.
Good morning, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing the public to speak at this event. I am a community gardener, and I'm concerned with the Schedule F rates, which maybe people haven't really considered too much. They are going up 289%, and that is what I would consider a rate shock, and that is actually included in the LADWP report. So I would like to draw your attention to Chapter 5 of the Water System Rate Action Report, specifically 5.10.1, page 69. This section mentions in the LADWP's own words about how in the past, Schedule F customers, and that's customers such as Parks and Rec, community gardens, things like that, have paid less than the cost of service as a result of policy that reflects certain offsetting factors. Of note, the LADWP receives free use of public irrigated land for well sites and storage space. LADWP receives free use of public irrigated land for stormwater detention and retention basins that aid stormwater capture for water supply. Residents that use public irrigated land are not charged directly for the cost of irrigation water and instead pay a negligible amount in their water rates to subsidize a portion of the cost of such irrigation water. Another huge amount of cost that is subsidized by the public is the free use of right-of-way throughout the whole region for LADWP pipes and infrastructure. With respect to Proposition 218, it appears that these amounts of public cost subsidies are not being taken into account in the cost of service analysis calculations. These public subsidies lower all customers' water rates and should be used as an offsetting factor in Schedule F rate calculations. Another way to look at this would be to compare the public cost subsidies as a benefit versus the benefit that bondholders are paid via interest on that $4 billion loan that you guys are going to be getting. This is included in the cost of service calculations, but the public subsidies are not. And so I'm very concerned, and I appreciate your time and thought in this Schedule F rate increase of 289%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Danila O'Dare, and after that, Noel Geller.
Hello, commissioners and staff. Thank you for the opportunity. I am one of several speakers from the LA Community Garden Council. I am the volunteer manager of one of the 40 member gardens, which is Crenshaw Community Garden, which is on 1/3 of an acre in Koreatown. It is about an average size with 36 gardeners and 1/3 of an acre, which will be relevant in a minute. The garden has a public purpose, like most community gardens. We have education, we have classes, we're a green oasis, there are science studies done. We disseminate gardening knowledge to the general public, enabling them to garden at home, and we have a key role in intercultural communication. People from different ethnic groups come, meet, and learn about each other, and I think this is true at all community gardens. I want to mention that how much water community gardens actually use. We use at high season in the low 60s 100 cubic feet, which is the equivalent of 5 homeowners on Schedule A who are typical users, or 8 homeowners of low users. If you multiply that by 40 community gardens, we're talking about the equivalent of 320 maximum Schedule A users. That's decimal dust. That's nothing. And for our public purpose, I think we deserve to be subsidized. We can't use recycled water because we're too small, and I think that's true of most community gardens. We are against this rate increase in part because we note that the ratepayer advocate did not weigh in on the value on the public value of the entities in Schedule F because DWP didn't give them the actual rates. So the ratepayer advocate's recommendation in support of the rate increase just leaves out all of the public benefits of the Schedule F customers because we're not included, because DWP didn't give them the rates. So I think that you should send back this rate request to the ratepayer advocate and give them the Schedule F data first, and then rediscuss this. Thank you.
Excuse me. Could I ask the lady a question? Where are these gardens located? You said there are 40 of them?
There are 40 members of the LA Community Garden Council. There are other gardens. These are in the city of LA. Most of them are in the city of LA.
And
our particular one is in Koreatown.
And so that's just one garden?
That's just one garden. And we're using at high season in the low 60s, 100 cubic feet. Now, there's some that are very large. There are some that are very small. So we're averaging out a very, very small amount.
So you're speaking on behalf on behalf of all of the gardens? Or
I'm speaking on behalf of my garden. We'll have somebody else speak on all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Noel Geller, and after that, Joanna Dyer.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the problematic proposal to raise Schedule F rate increases by up to 289%. My name is Noelle Geller, and I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Community Garden Council. And as the previous speaker mentioned, we maintain 40 community gardens throughout Los Angeles County, and we offer advice to 125 others. So I can tell you firsthand that this rate proposal is going to be really, really horrible to thousands of families throughout LA County. Most of these community gardeners live in food deserts, and what they grow is their only means of food security. So if these water bills are raised, they will no longer be able to afford renting plots. In turn, I fear that community gardens will be closed off to those that need them most, and healthy foods will become unavailable to thousands of families. Thank you.
Excuse me. What is the dollar amount that we're talking about here?
That I don't have on me, but we will be presenting to City Council in January. Even a 10% increase over a year is going to be really undoable for people that live in parts of Los Angeles that cannot even afford $5 a month to rent a plot.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Joanna Dyer, and after that, Andy Lipkis.
afternoon. I'm Johanna Dyer with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and thank you for the opportunity to make these comments today. I'd like to highlight what an improvement these proposed rates are from current and previous rates in many ways. Moving from a two-tiered structure to a four-tiered structure will offer significant benefits in terms of a more equitable and accurate allocation of the costs of maintaining our water system. And the tiered structure will likely result in significant water conservation benefits as well. When it conceived of its current two-tier system in the early 90s, DWP was a leader among water agencies. With the proposed new rate structure, DWP will again set a strong example for other agencies around the state. There remain areas where the rates could be improved for better equity and conservation. We've provided comments to that effect in greater detail earlier. But for one example, infrastructure costs, by which I'm referring to the water infrastructure adjustment. Infrastructure costs should be allocated proportionally among customers by consumption. Given the significant increase in expenditures slated for much-needed infrastructure improvements, those costs should be allocated in a way that recognizes the connection between water demand and infrastructure needs. In another example, the water use level allocated for Tier 3, currently proposed at 135% of the evapotranspiration adjustment factor, should be lowered. The ETAF, as you know, allows for sufficient water for customers to fully maintain essential water uses, as well as even inefficient outdoor landscaping. Therefore, that allocation can and should be lowered significantly, as water usage beyond the ETAF allocation is, by definition, excessive, so should not be within Tier 3. I applaud the improvements we've seen in the current rates, and as we all continue to evaluate the rates in the coming months, let's continue to keep in mind the important principles of equity and conservation, which go hand in hand. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Andy Lipkiss, and after that, Cynthia Hubach.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here representing Tree People's 15,000 members and the partnerships we have with the community. I also want to acknowledge the advanced and very encouraging partnership that we are helping facilitate with Department of Water and Power and LA County Flood Control and LA City Bureau of Sanitation, which is all about this. More efficient use of water, eliminating waste duplication, overlap, and creating a really strong, resilient, climate-resilient local water supply. Great efforts have been made, and there's great results. The need for an increase is very clear, both to support the innovation and local water supply enhancement. It's great to have the really strong support from the ratepayer advocate and other usual critics to understanding how much this system is under-supported and needs to be improved. DWP's shift to local water is encouraging, and it needs to be accelerated. Page 14 of your report shows almost a tripling of investment, but given what we know about climate change and severe long-term drought, we really want to encourage that increase significantly over time. The recently completed stormwater capture master plan that the department did, the first in its history, identifies 45%, or nearly half the water LA needs, that can be captured and added to our supply locally. That's the kind of investment that needs to be shifted. This plan shows some of that, but the plan identifies a conservative path and an aggressive path. The investment our determination of the investment that shows in the plan isn't sufficient to even reach the conservative level. So we urge you to shift and increase that. And to continue expanding, prioritizing, increasing local water supply. Want to also endorse the previous statements of the NRDC and the Green LA team that has been both supporting and moving towards getting this right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Cynthia Hubach.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Cynthia Hubach. I'm the founder of the Elysian Valley Community Garden. I'm also on the board of the LA Community Garden Council and serve on the Urban Agriculture Working Group of the LA Food Policy Council. I guess I'm involved in urban agriculture and community gardening. Interestingly, our Elysian Valley Garden has been paying residential rates for the last 3 years because it took forever to get onto the Schedule F. And it works out to about $30 per gardener per year, which doesn't seem like very much. But honestly, many of the gardeners in our garden struggle to pay even that, and we end up subsidizing many of our gardeners. I can't say much more eloquently than what Danila had to say, so I certainly second everything that she says, but I will say that what we have found in the Urban Agriculture Working Group is there is a real renaissance in urban agriculture in the city and county of Los Angeles. And these projects create great benefits for the city in terms of green space, recreation, food access, reducing the heat island effect, water infiltration, recharging groundwater. So there are great benefits, and I think it really is worth a subsidy from the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was the last speaker.
Thank you all. Very helpful input. Excuse me. Okay. Who is going to present item 10?
I'll turn it over to Mr. Peltola.
So I will do the presentation. Neil Guglielmo will help me, and please, as we go through this, we can answer any questions. This has been more than a year of huge effort between a number of people, just to mention financial services. Neil has led that effort. Unfortunate for Neil, he came from sanitation, and immediately we tossed him into this teapot, really. The operating organizations, Fred and his staff in the RPA, Navigant, PA Consultants, CLA, CIO, City Council, neighborhood councils. It's been a lot of tremendous work, and this is what you see as the results of that. All of the public input, we're going to go through the different meetings that we went through. I think everybody that spoke, we have talked to them and trying to lay out what the principles are behind the this rate action. One thing just to mention, all of this work, again, with the people that have been involved, one of the recommendations that Andrew Ray talked about was that we need to get a more integrated system. And that's something that we're using the tools available. I think we have a great product, but it is something that in the future we need to put in some more automation to do that. So if we jump to page 1, in 2012, City Council made a number of requests. These came from Dr. Pickles' report. I won't go through each one of these, but this is something that we have responded to on each one of these. Probably the biggest one is the labor contract that was done, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Phase 1 benchmarking, we'll also talk about that. Conducted cost of service studies. It's very important on both the water and power. We have conducted cost of service studies to guide the rates and in line with industry standards. Just other things down to reevaluated the surcharge approach with restructured rates. We've looked at that. Legal has advised us on that. We're going to have that for the power side. We are only talking about, I'm going to do both water and power in this presentation, but what is before you is presentation of the water rates for approval today. Next page. So we have done cost reductions. You've seen this slide before. The biggest thing, again, is the labor agreement. We've had no COLAs for 3 years, and more importantly, on the long term is a new pension tier. 40% of our workforce can retire in the next 5 years. So as the new people come in to replace them, they will be at the lower pension tier, which will save going forward. Pension costs, they move very slowly, but we are on the right trajectory with the new agreement. We've refinanced a lot of debt, saved about $267 million for both water and power. Securitization, that is set up. We are working with City Council. We've got to finalize that, but there's significant savings for that in the future, actually double-digit percentage rate increases that we will avoid by using securitization. And then benchmarking, I'm going to talk about that actually on the next slide. So page 3, when we benchmarked, just the overall on this is, number one, total O&M costs, probably the most important measure of cost effectiveness, indicates that we were roughly near the median. So not the lowest, not the highest. We're roughly right in the middle on both water and power. Our reliability on power is very good, first and second quartile. But one thing it told us, if you recall, is that our infrastructure investment level, specifically in distribution on power, this also goes for water, and I think it was amplified in the IEA survey that Mr. Ray went through. is we need to invest. And that's what this whole rate increase is about, is really investing in infrastructure. Our customer service O&M was low, and again, I think that was amplified. It's where we need to improve in customer service. Page 4, our rates. And again, this is infrequently, if ever, reported that our rates are lower. Many things that our customers are unaware of. As we give presentations, many people are unaware that the LADWP rates for both water and power, and this is shown for a typical customer, is much lower, even when you throw some of the rate increases in for some of these other cities. Just as the top one there, Santa Barbara is having, I think on the water side, a 39% rate increase because they're opening their desal plant. Similarly, if you look on page 5, this just compares the Southern California Edison rates versus LADWP. And you notice from 2000 up through 2006, our rates were flat. We had, they were fixed for that long. And back then we were directed we need to have small increases to avoid the rate shock. And you can see how Edison was going up and stays above us. And we've had a number of years where we haven't had base rate increases. So on the water side, in the last 5 years, there's been no base rate increases. There's been increases for water quality, for purchased water, but for base rate increases for the last 5 years, there's been no increases, and that's what funds the infrastructure. Similarly, on the power side, 3 of the last 5 years, there's been no base rate increases, which gets us to slide 6. What are the priorities for this rate request? Is to replace aging infrastructure, protect from drought, and transform our supplies and meet mandates. That means on both water and power, to transform our supplies, and then improve customer service, but while keeping rates competitive. So on this slide we had in the last presentation, but it's changed slightly, and let me just talk a little bit about that. So the power revenue needs are now at $825 million. I think we were at $900 million before, and that has really come down for 2 main reasons. One is the natural gas price has dropped, just market conditions. It's dropped since the presentation in July. And also one of the things that we went through, again with Dr. Pickle's office and with Navigant, is we reduced some of the infrastructure spending, not because we thought it was the right thing to do, but because it's the amount we thought we can reasonably do given the amount of resources we have, both contract and labor. So it's just lining up what our available resources are. On the water side, that's increased some, and really where that's come is the preliminary. It was based on the preliminary budget, which did not have the Owens Lake phases 9 and 10. We'll talk a little bit about that, and that again saves us some water as well. And as the board knows, it's certainly something we want to do. The next slide. It's still very similar when you look at the mandates. 80% of the power revenues are for mandates. And you can see renewable energy and solar is 35%, repowering is 7%, and energy efficiency, which is our most efficient resource, is 38%. The fuel has actually dropped. That used to be 10%. And then the reliability, like we talked about, we reduced our expenditures just a little bit in the early years so that we could have a better ramp up of where we could get those the reliability investments made, and so that has dropped some. On the on the water, again, very similar numbers, just slightly different. 78% of the water revenues are tied to infrastructure. 59% is direct pipelines, trunk lines, regulator stations, pumps. And then water quality, which also is a part of our infrastructure, but it's more on the regulatory side. So between the 2 of those, 59% and 19%, you're looking at 78%. What has gone up a little bit is the Owens Valley, where you see that 7%. That's phases 9 and 10 of the Owens Lake. And then what's really important is on the left-hand side is all of the, and what many of the speakers spoke to, is the local water supply between water conservation, water recycling, groundwater, and stormwater. And in one of the slides going forward, you see our water supply, you'll see the impacts of that. On the next page, this is not meant to be all-encompassing, but just to give an indicator of what are the big things where we're spending money on the power capital and power O&M. So some of the big things, you look at energy conservation incentives, $93 million. You look down at the bottom, replacing deteriorated poles, $95 million. Cross arms, $53 million. Replacement, it doesn't have it in there. It's the transformers, which is $51 million. New transmission lines, $34 million. Again, a utility is very capital intensive. We spend a lot of money, and we have these assets for a long time. On the right-hand side is just the O&M, different things to keep the stations operating. Nuclear generation expense, which is our portion of our expense for Palo Verde Nuclear Plant. Haynes Generating, Scattergood. So Haynes is down at Seal Beach. Scattergood is just to the south of the airport. And then down the bottom, you can see maintenance of overhead distribution system, $34 million, and then vegetation management, which is a fancy way of saying tree trimming, and that's $26 million. On the next page is water. So again, big things here. Distribution mains, $124 million. And this is, by the way, each of these numbers I'm mentioning is an annual average over the 5 years. So when we say distribution mains, that means we're going to average $124 million per year for 5 years. Trunk lines, $110 million. Just water quality trunk line improvements, again, $90 million. Conservation, very important, $39 million. And water recycling is a little under $102 million. And then I won't go through each one of them, but just the main one on the water O&M, you see Owens Valley, that's $41 million a year.
Jeff, if I could just briefly insert, while this is a summary, the detail is in this and attachments, and this is also available online. So
Yep.
any members of the public who want to really bore down into that are more than welcome. Go ahead.
So on the next slide is water infrastructure investment. This is the UCLA leak. I won't make my usual UCLA USC jokes here. I think everybody's heard them all from the various presentations. But the main thing here is where it says the cost. Sudden water break costs 3 times more than planned repair. On all of the infrastructure, what we're proposing is not to let things go to failure, but to fix them ahead of time. And it's some multiple. In this case, we think that it costs 3 times because we let it go to failure, whereas if we would have done it in a planned environment, it would have been 1/3 the cost. And the true costs to society are much higher. You lose the water, there's less impact on traffic, all of that. So the main thing here is it costs less to do it on a planned basis. And on the next slide, this is showing mainline replacements. So that yellow line in 06-07, we had over 2,000 leaks in the mainline replacement. And the water system went on a program to increase the mainline, and so you can see where that's gone up since 06-07. And because of the way the water system looks at it, Marty can maybe touch a little bit at how they identify which mains to replace, but you can see the leaks have gone down a significant amount. And you can see the plan going forward is even higher. So I don't know if you want to...
I would, rather than go into it in detail,
Okay.
I'll remind the board that posted on the myledwp.com is both the water infrastructure and the power infrastructure synopses that talk through all the major components. How do we rank them? What are our expectations in the shorter term for repair?
Right. And also you can see at the end of basically in 18-19, we're going to be at about 205,000 feet of a mainline replacement. There was some discussion, and again, Navigant's even recommended more than that. So what we have in here is what we believe we can do. And if anything, much of the feedback we've gotten is we should do more than what we have in the plan. Next slide, page 13. The key element here is we want to reduce down our MWD imported water by roughly half. And so if you look on the right-hand side, you see the stormwater capture, conservation, recycled water, and groundwater. That's all 36% versus the groundwater and recycled on the current, which is about 13%. So that's really where the big improvement is, and that's the local water supply of what where much of the spending is going for to reduce down and make us more resilient to droughts like we're going through right now. The next slide is 5-year spending plan for the core initiatives. So you can see infrastructure replacement more than double, going from $306 million to $711. The supply transition, and this is roughly 3 times, that's all the local water supply that we need to be able to spend on a variety of different programs. And as Marcy had identified, we have that available online. Water quality is roughly the same level because many of those projects have already been started. And then Owens Valley regulatory goes from $103 million to $209, and a big portion of that is for water savings. If you look in the Navigant report, you talk about a 50% reduction, hopefully, in our water use for Owens Valley. So switching to power, this chart on the left-hand side shows our number of poles. And the key here is the service life of a pole is about 60 years. So if you look on the left-hand side, you can see 43% of our power poles are 60 years old. So that's 137,000 poles. And then in another 10 years, you're going to add 71,000 poles. So you're going to have 208,000, or 65% of our poles will be over 60 years old and are over 50 now. Our budget going forward is we're going up to about 6,000 poles. So you can see this is quite a bit of a challenge and where we need to ramp up to meet this to remain reliable. The IEA study goes through this. We're going to do also 10,000 cross arms and 48 miles of underground cable. Now, again, the cost is less when we do it on a planned basis, just like we talked about in the water. Same thing here for the power. And does it work? And we've shown this chart before, but it always illustrates. In 2007, we had a heat storm. Over 28,000 of our customers, not the number of people, but 28,000 of our customers were out for more than a day. That's completely unacceptable from any utility perspective. We used a previous rate increase to install new distribution transformers, and you can see in 2014 with a worse heat storm, it was actually longer and hotter, we had a 99.3% reduction, down to 195. So it costs less and it works. The power supply transition for water, or for power to meet the mandates, you can see 2014. And the one thing we've added here, just for some perspective, you look in the bottom left, is the CO2 emissions in 1990. That's the reference point. A little under 18 metric tons of CO2. You can see even in 2014, we had a 17% reduction, and that was with our renewables coming on at 20%, natural gas. Now in 2020, where this rate action will take us, renewables have now gone up by 13% to 33%, which is, again, a state mandate. Coal, as recently has been discussed, we're going to be out of Navajo, so that's dropped from 40% to 23%. Nuclear stays roughly the same, and energy efficiency, again, no emissions from that. It's 15%. And you can see a 42% reduction in our CO2 emissions, going from the reference point a little under 18 to 10.4. And then forward out in 2026, when now we get out of IPP, and you're actually a 67% reduction to 5.9. It's pretty impressive, and again, this is the IRP that was discussed earlier and what the power system has been working on. Next slide shows the spending for the power. You got about a 60% increase in infrastructure replacement, poles, cross arms, transformers, going from $525 million to $850 a year. The supply transition, so that's renewables, repowerings, going from a little under $800 million to about $1.1 billion. And then energy efficiency is actually just about tripling, which is significant. We've got a lot of programs. We talked before about the pool pump program, which saves our customers roughly 15%. There's some other programs we've been working on that Nancy Sutley and David Jaco will be bringing. AC tune-ups, all sorts of different things that we're working on because that is our best way of saving both money and reducing the impact on the environment. Page 18 is the economic benefit of these infrastructure investments. So this is on the water infrastructure investments. We're going to have about $228 million in additional investment per year over the next 5 years. We believe that's going to support 9,000 private sector jobs. And that is not DWP jobs, that's outside jobs, because most of this we're going to be doing by contract. On the power side, We're looking at about $2.8 billion in economic output, and it's going to support about 12,600 jobs. So when you look at that, it's something that all within the Los Angeles basin, we're going to have a lot of economic activity for doing, for replacing this infrastructure that is needed for us for the next 30 to 50 years. Again, this is something prepared by Beacon Economics. They think that when we spend that money, you can have 4 times the economic benefits on a more global basis. The next slide is the outreach summary. So we have done 61 rates presentation. That's probably a little bit old. I think we've done maybe 1 or 2 more. And the interesting part of this is if you look down the bottom, the last 2 bullets, so the video views, if you recall the videos that we brought, we had over 384,000 video views. So that really is a testimony to having this online, that people went through and viewed it. The website views, 237,000. So that's something that I think is good. You can see we've really covered virtually every area of the city in each of the presentations that we've been doing since July. On the next page, you'll see in the picture the poor schmuck that did about 31 of these presentations. And again, the biggest topics that we got back from this, I think most people agreed that replacing and fixing the aging infrastructure was something that everybody saw. The financial relationship between the city, there's always a lot of questions on that, on the transfer, utility users tax. Everybody believes Los Angeles should work to protect itself against the drought. That's, again, where the local water comes in. And then protecting our most vulnerable populations. The conservation-based rates, and we'll get to that in a little bit, I think do that to the extent we can. Most people that are on limited incomes will spend or will not use a lot of energy and a lot of water. Conservation-based rate making helps that because it incentivizes people to use less, and we'll talk about that when we show the rates. And again, creating jobs and boosting the economy. So summary of changes. What has happened since we presented in July? And I'm going to go through this rather quickly. The first one is performance-based rates. So we're going to have required reporting twice a year to you, the board. That's what's in the ordinance. We will come back on every 6 months, and actually every quarter we're going to be reporting to Dr. Pickle and his staff, but there is specific metrics that we're going to have to report on going forward that is in the ordinance. We'll be coming back to you in January to identify the targets and the variances. I'm going to show you a sheet that has most of what that is because we've been working on it, but something we've worked with the operating organizations to make sure they're comfortable with it as well. Maybe comfortable is not the right word. They're aware of it to do the reporting. It also allowed us, by doing this, to have a removal of the caps. So that's something's good. As we get more, we want to do more infrastructure, we can do that because there are no caps on this. It's all based on the reporting that we'll have to do. Also, the interim rate review. This is something Dr. Pickle specifically is interested in and has worked with us on. We're going to have a check-in period that basically halfway through this process where we can revise the 5-year financial plan and the performance outlook and any status of any responses that the mayor or city council may ask us to do. But that is also in there in the ordinance. We've got reduced water sales that are in this, consistent with the mayor's executive directive. And the power access charge, we had a lot of discussion with the solar and environmental community where we originally were looking at the amount of energy going to and from a particular residential service. What we have agreed to is the amount of energy that goes into that residential service. So we changed that. And again, the reliability spending, that's been created. The lower fuel prices dropped it. And then the rate action. So our plan right now, hopefully as we secure approval from your board, we're looking that both water and power going through the process of going to the Energy Environment Committee and going to City Council, that it would be effective on April 1st of 2016. Specific to Dr. Pickle's office on the next slide, so we've had bi-weekly meetings with the OPA since July of 2013. They've reviewed major aspects of our financial plan, our major capital projects, marginal cost study results, various rate design options. We've really worn out the seats in room 456 with Fred and the staff. They've had a comprehensive analysis of different things. They've asked us 150 data requests, and we prepared at least 40 additional financial sensitivity cases. So a lot of times people think that Fred is not engaged. He's actually, him and his staff are very engaged with us. We're meeting right now probably about every other day, I'd say, on all of the different data.
Sounds like they want too much information.
It's almost like they want too much information. It's fine. We'll give them all the information they want.
We'll send you a sample initial data request from the POC that runs a number of pages that make you feel better.
Yeah. And again, that next to last bullet talked about the proposed rates. We may not be practical to further increase it because of the anticipated personnel retirements and constraints on outsourcing. But they have worked very diligently with us to improve accountability, transparency, and departmental performance by including the performance-based rate making in the interim rate review. On the next slide is just an overview of the performance-based rate making. So this is something where we're going to report quarterly on specific key performance metrics, and I'm going to show you those. It's in this PowerPoint. And then semi-annually, we'll come to you, the board. So as we are outside of any variance, we're going to have to come up with a mitigation plan on how we do that. Just as an example, if we have the anything on the power side, number of poles, the power system will have to say, well, the reason we're out is because of this reason, and here's how I'm going to get back in. That will ultimately end up to you, the board, after Dr. Pickle and his staff have looked at it. So it's really something that I think for the transparency and accountability, it's something that will be out there, and the public will be able to see that every 6 months at minimum, and we're probably going to have even the quarterly stuff will be available publicly. The revised base rate revenues will be based on the updated costs that we have 2 years from now, and again, the status of any responses to mayor or city council reports. I am not going to go through on the next slide all of these, but these are the metrics. These metrics, the actual board metrics are in the ordinance. However, the variance threshold and the target, we are in the process. The variance threshold, you can see the numbers are in there. So for the power system, roughly in the 15% for a lot of these areas. So if they're above or below 15%, that's outside of the target. We're going to have a mitigation plan. For right now,
those tolerances, though, and the targets are going to be something that the board can adjust.
Right. Yeah, and specifically in the ordinance, the board can not only adjust the targets, you can adjust the variances, and you can also adjust what metrics we're looking at. So this is the initial set. That's the power one. Like I said, not going to go through detail. Then we have the water system metrics as well, and we also have some joint metrics, but you can see with the variance thresholds, we promise to use bigger print when we bring these metrics back to you for approval. So, page 26, what's going to happen to the rate impact? So the rate impacts are still very similar to what we discussed before. You see low-use residential, so it's important to remember, as I touched on, low-income and Lifeline tend to be in this range. They tend to be in the low-use residential, which is our 30 percentile, which means our lowest 30% of customers that consume the lowest 30%. You can see the current monthly bill is roughly $75. This is just for water and for power. The rate increase between the two of them is going to be about 2.7% per year for 5 years. So at the end of the 5 years, their bill will go from $75 to roughly $85 or $86. The next typical residential, which is a 50 percentile, which means we have 50% of the customers use less, 50% use more. Their current bill is about $131 a month for water and power, and it's going to go up about 3.3%, a little bit more than the low-use residential, and they'll end up paying about $154 after 5 years. And then the high-use residential is our top 10% of customers. And you can see they pay about $276 per month right now for water and power. And the rate increase now has gone up some. Still reasonable at 5.5%, but that's the conservation-based rate making, where as you use more, you will pay more, because indeed it costs us more to supply that. And so at the end of 5 years, it'll go from $276 to about $362. The next slide is the tiered rates. And we had a similar slide, I think, when we first presented this in July. But just to touch on a couple of things. One is the, as Joanna from the NRDC talked about, in the early 90s, we had 2 tiers, which was really the first time where you used a water budget. And it was something where we established what that water budget was, based on your landscape and or the size of your yard, the temperature you're in. It's one thing for Los Angeles, which is different from virtually any other utility, any other municipal utility, is we have so much size. We're 465 square miles. So the temperatures that you get in the valley are far different than what you'll get in the port, and far different than what you get. And we have 3 temperature zones for water, and we're continuing that. But when we look at this, we're using science to determine the basic use is going to be 8 HCF, which is about 200 gallons per day, and it's, I think, $1.18. The efficient use is what you need for California drought-tolerant landscapes. So that is the amount of water you need given where you are, so the temperatures that you're in, the time of year, and the size of your landscape, the size of your lot, you will get that water allocation for the Tier 2. Tier 3 is for a lawn, and albeit it's at 135%, that's something we've talked to the environmental community. We will relook at that as we move forward, but at least for now, we're going to stay at the 135% of the ETAF. And then Tier 4 is excessive use, so that's just, and you look on the right-hand side, that one arrow, only 9% of our customers will be in that Tier 4. And 55% of our customers will never get out of Tier 1 or Tier 2. So the rates we've shown here are for 17-18. So it's important when you look at the 17-18, Tier 1, even when we get 3 years from now, the Tier 1 price will still be the same as what Tier 1 is now. So it's lined up to look at our water supply costs, and this is something that will change if we get the Godzilla El Nino, as they say. All of a sudden, we would have a lot of water from the LA Aqueduct. What that will do is drive down, especially our lower tiers, because that water will be cheaper, and we have to look at that every 6 months as to what water will go in what tier. So it is something that, again, staff has done a great job of coming up with this. It's very dynamic in the pricing and very consistent with how we think we have to meet the recent legal issues surrounding Proposition 218. The next slide is just the ways to save energy efficiency. As you've seen, both that and water conservation, we're spending a lot of money. We have a lot of programs. We are encouraging our customers to use that. And then lastly is the timeline for the rate request. So back in July is when we came back to this board to start the public outreach process. It has really gone on from July through December. The RPA, Fred will talk about his report that was recently published. We're going today for the water rates, and then we are coming back on January 5th. We're working out some different issues with that, but on January 5th is when we're coming back for the power rates. Both of them will come together, go to the Energy Environment Committee in late January, early February. And I think the target date is on the Proposition 218 is February 24th. Okay, Neil is confirming that. So that's when the first vote right now is planned, if everything goes as planned, to the City Council. The new rates will go into effect in April 1st. With that, we have a number of appendix slides, but I think we'll open up for questions.
Well, this is very, very helpful. Before we have questions, I think we ought to hear from from Dr. Pickle, get his report in the mix, and then we can open it all up.
And I have a report on the water rates only. we're going to go over the long-term timeline for water and power rates, give you our opinion and the basics of our review, and talk about the performance targets and rate adjustments. The last increase to base rates was in 2009. There was a change in rates to allow water quality investments to be passed through, and that was implemented in early 2012. There was a base rate proposal that was put forward, then withdrawn in 2012. And then for over the last 2 years, we have met regularly with DWP, as Jeff has mentioned. There was an earlier proposal that was put together right before Marcy Edwards arrived in 2014. That was put on hold, and this proposal process was reinitiated in July of this year. The draft ordinance was released in August. The updated financial plan rates and updated ordinance were released to us in late November. And then we were working on changes to the financial plan rates and ordinance through the week of December 6th. The OPA review, together with Navigant's report on the water rates, was released on December 11th. And if the public would like to see the full reports, they should go to the website opa.lacity.org. First, it's our role to issue an opinion on reasonableness. And in a regulated context, what does reasonableness mean? Are rates equitable to the many competing interests? Are customer costs connected to the provision of reliable service? Is the allocation of costs non-discriminatory? Those are all issues to be raised in this process. In our review, we've been assisted by a specialized national expert, Navigant, and they assisted in the 2012 rate review and rate reviews before then. We had the benefit of having them do the IEA study at the same time, so we were able to do a less deep dive of our own in infrastructure issues and build off of what they had. And we have coordinated with DWP staff on many management meetings. I apologize for the typo. I must have been thinking of Neil Guglielmo. Also included in the rate report was a review of the ordinance and financial plans. Coming up, not as part of this report, are reports on power issues and common issues, including labor costs and some other common costs. The bottom line, we believe DWP's rate proposal, as modified in December, is just and reasonable. As Jeff has noted, the annual rate increases for the customers are about 4.7% per year. The average annual revenue growth is 5.3%, taking revenues from about $1 billion to about $1.4 billion over the 5-year period. The increase in revenue is driven by a slight growth in demands from current drought conditions. The capital spending for aging infrastructure and local water supply and regulatory projects is important. Operating and maintenance costs, including labor, are growing, and there are reductions to the unfunded employee pension liability that are part of the costs. More pipeline replacements are planned every year, but we're concerned that less funds are in this than needed to keep up with the aging system. At the same time, key staffing may be inadequate for the rate of increased project spending. We're less worried on the water side than we are on the power side, because the step up on the power side is more substantial. Here are the rates over time for the various tiers. To the left are the rates over the last 10 years for the two-tier scheme we've had up to this point in time. And to the right are the new tiers, the primarily home-oriented use in Tier 1. Because of the drought and restrictions associated with Prop 218, there's a bit of a bump as Tier 1 starts up, but then it drops down to very close to current Tier 1 levels. And then Tier 2 is slightly higher than the current Tier 2, then Tier 3 and Tier 4 increase, reflecting excess water use for Tier 4, and the rate increases for Tier 4 don't really step in until the third year of this process. We believe DWP's 4 rate tiers are consistent with recent judicial findings and with LA policy. Annual increases are 4% per year for low-use single-family residences, 4% per year for budgeted multifamily bills, not if you hit second tier, and 7% per year for higher water use, not in Tier 4. This would be Tier 3 customers, single-family homes. And then the increases are large for public irrigation, but they're needed because of the limitations posed by recent judicial findings related to Prop 218. These projections are based on a return to normal water supply conditions by July of this year. So if we don't return to normal water supply conditions, the increases will be larger. Now, Jeff has talked a lot about the metrics. You've seen the long list, and we'd be happy to add more. The projected increases are going to be monitored through this process, and there will be reductions to planned increases if there are unattained or unattainable planned spending that can't be achieved. That's part of the purpose for the semi-annual reviews and for the midterm check-in or interim check-in. There are rate mechanisms for rate revisions when capital operating costs or demands vary from forecast. And these performance metrics will be reported to the OPA, to the board, the council, and the public to better align forecasts and activities for transparency and to hold DWP more accountable.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
I think what we ought to do is open it up to questions or comments from commissioners to either the RPA or the DWP staff. Does the general manager have anything she wishes to say before we open it up to questions?
Limit mine to response to questions, sir.
Do commissioners have questions? I see the left pinky from Commissioner Barad. That means a very short question.
Is that a short joke? I wanted to thank Jeff for an excellent overview report, and also to Fred Pickle. But I've got some questions. Kind of a general question of clarification I'd like to direct to Jeff Patola. Who sets the rates? Where do they actually come from when you really begin? And then kind of like that's A, then B and C. How did you arrive at these levels, this level of rate increase? And what drives you to be specific on this level of rate increase?
So the mechanism or the method that we have chosen, obviously we've talked about, it's very capital intensive, which means we've got to spend a lot of capital money. We're going to have to issue a lot of bonds. We've talked about the $4.2 billion. So the financial metrics that are set by the board, We've looked at those, and part of the analysis that Dr. Pickle's office did was looking at, are those the appropriate levels? And for the water system, we have the debt service coverage ratio, which is essentially how much cash do you have available to make the debt service payments. What is our minimum cash level, which is 170 days, and then the maximum debt amount, which is 65% on the water. By using those metrics, then we look at how much spending we're going to do through the budget process. That will arrive at what the needed revenue increase that we're talking about, that's where it comes from. So those board-adopted metrics to keep us at hopefully the AA metric, which I think we will stay AA with this, that gives us the revenue increase we need. And then we get to the level of rate increases for each of the different customer classes, and that's where the cost of service study comes in. We'll look at the cost of service for each of the different classes, and we allocate that overall revenue to each of those classes. And even within the class, that's how we set the rates, is using that cost of service.
So the process actually begins in your office.
My office is the one that does all of that work of setting up those rates, doing the financial plan, and then we work with Dr. Pickle as well as Navigant. They go through and review all that.
Okay. I was happy to hear the ratepayer advocate say that he believes that this to be reasonable and equitable. I wanted to ask him a question regarding, let's see, I don't think this is page number. You're concerned that, this is regarding pipeline replacements, that key staffing may be inadequate for more project spending. Could you elaborate on that?
DWP can contract out some of the main line and trunk line construction. They also can do it in-house. Even if they contract things out, they need contract monitors, contract management. So we're worried in this period of retirements that they could be pinched on contract management as well as on staffing to do it internally. Now, our concern is deeper on the power side. The water side has been spending their budgets and achieving their planned goals for the last couple of years. They've been doing a good job of that and a much better job than years earlier. So, but at the same time, we have concerns because of the step up in investment.
So would this mean that you wouldn't be able, what's the repercussion? I mean, does this mean that you're not going to be able, we won't be able to use the money because we don't have the manpower to?
Correct.
So what happens in that case?
That's why we have these mechanisms set up for the rates to be reviewed, performance to be reviewed, progress to be reviewed. And if necessary, those excess funds can be rebated through the rate process or used to reduce anticipated future rate increases.
Okay, so that kind of is a segue to my next question on page, well, I've got page 9 of our big report, where it says, if necessary, adjustment rates, let's see, if necessary, that you can adjust the rates based on the performance of these programs. So would that, does that mean that there's going to be a report here to the board and the board would adjust? How does that work that you actually
There are really
adjust
two
rates?
cycles. The plan is to have a semi-annual cycle where DWP will provide us the information on an ordinance provide schedule twice a year. We will have to issue a report on our review of that a month later, and the board will have that available to us a month before it needs to act. So that gives us time, a specified, ordinance-specified cycle of time to act on this. And then we also have an interim review so that after 2 full fiscal years of this rate increase, we're going to come back and review all the projections, all the performance, and then get back to you. It will be, the report will be required, we will be required to bring our report to you about 9 months after that fiscal year ends. that second
Would
fiscal
the
year.
percentage of the rate increase literally be adjusted?
That can happen within a certain band. If it's outside of a certain band, it may also require approval of the city council.
So one thing, just what Dr. Pickle is talking about is the base rate, which is roughly half of the overall revenue on the water side. That can be adjusted, but also the pass-through for the infrastructure. We're going to look at how much money is being spent by the water system to put that infrastructure in, what the plans are going forward, and we'll bring that to the board, similar to how we do the ECAF right now. So every 6 months, you will have the opportunity to look at that and adjust it. So if we don't, I mean, I actually like Fred's thing. This is the first time I saw it was when I arrived at the use them or lose them.
Yeah.
That's kind of the issue. If we don't spend the money,
yes,
we will not charge the ratepayers.
That was what I was.
And that's compared to now, whereas if we start to underspend, the rates continue to collect and we end up with more capital in the budget.
And it's important. The infrastructure is going to take a long time to repair.
Yes.
Right. LA was built between 1920 and 1970. It's going to take us decades to replace all this infrastructure.
Okay, I had a question for Jeff Patola. There seems to be some confusion about the rates rolling back to July, and one of the terms that was used was it's retroactive, which I think has gotten some of the community upset about that. I wonder if you could clarify. Is it retroactive? Does it roll back? How does all that work?
I think that discussion has been specific to the power side and the water. I don't think it really comes. It's not retroactive rate making. What it is, we're not going to go back and somebody find out what they were billed in July and charge them for July again. It ties into the decoupling mechanism, which essentially is maybe Neil, if you could jump back up there real quick just to show. For clarity, we have a slide on it, which is slide 31. So we look at what that sales target is, and at the end of the fiscal year, if the year-end revenues are below the target, we would collect that amount. If the year-end revenues are above the target, we actually return it back to the customer. We have been working very hard with Dr. Pickle's office on mitigating it, or coming up with some steps to mitigate that on the power side. So when we come to you on January 5th, I think we have a proposed solution that would ensure that we don't have a significant amount, if any, of amount we would collect. But it's not retroactive rate making. That it's really something where we would charge a little bit going forward to make up for the revenues we didn't collect in the fiscal year. But we won't rebill people.
So just to clarify, if somebody asserts that this is retroactive rate making, that's inaccurate. Is that
correct? Right. And we've worked through legal to ensure that.
Okay, well, that's very helpful to know. I know that you've talked about the over 60 community meetings, and I applaud you all because that's real community outreach that we've been talking about. And in those meetings, as a result of those meetings, meeting with the community in all parts of the city, have you or the ratepayer, what changes have you made? Have you made changes in the structure or the amount of the increase? What do you see coming from all the gathering, the input since July, have you put into this?
One thing that was disheartening in some of those community meetings, a fairly large percentage, is someone would stand up and say, this all sounds reasonable, but we don't trust you. So what we're going to do as part of our report is they would mention certain costs. We're going to include as part of our follow-on power report a review of common costs that were often the topic of the we don't trust you speech that we would hear. And so those can be monitored and managed more easily by the board. Also, all these metrics are part of a series set in ordinance, unlike prior reports like this, so that they're regular. We have a required timeline for both DWP and my office to get information to the board on a basis where they have enough time to review it, think about it, ask questions, follow-up questions to us, and it will affect both the adjustments and the interim rate review. So I think that increased transparency will help a lot with We Don't Trust You.
Yeah, and I would echo that, and Neil had pulled up the slide with that performance-based rate making goes to the fact that we're going to have a lot more transparency, that the public will be able to see all of these different metrics, of which there are a number of metrics, and they can see how we're performing. That hasn't been done before. It's something we'll definitely, obviously, be putting on the web as well so that the public can see it.
Because as important as community outreach is, what's also important is that the community feels they're being heard.
Right.
And that you're implementing and listening to them and making some changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really good, to hear. And I think based on the Navigant report, that this is part of customer service, this is part of community outreach. When people say, I don't trust you, I think this is all part of that whole same, scenario.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other commissioners have questions, comments?
After you.
Commissioner Fleming? Everyone's so polite.
Well, no, I would just echo most of what Jill just said, but especially thanks to Jeff and to Fred and to Marcy. I think the community outreach piece of this has been, I know it's been long and trying at times, and the pipes and the poles aren't waiting to get repaired, but I really appreciate the efforts that have been made. And I guess I would just say that, my father always said that the perfect is not the enemy of the good. Mm-hmm. So this isn't perfect, right? I'm not even sure that it's good, but it's unquestionably needed and necessary. And I think that you all and your teams have really laid the groundwork as to why it has to happen. And I do hope that the constituents who've paid so much attention to this during the process do keep our feet to the fire about making sure that these new revenues, their money, is used for exactly what we say it's being used for, and that is for infrastructure that is somehow managing to hold on most days here in the city when I can't imagine how it does that. So I hope that the public doesn't just come to hearings while we have conversations every 5 years about a rate increase, but actually stays engaged with the work of this department and with the great community outreach that you all have done, so that we really do keep track of this in the coming months and years.
Commissioner Funderburk?
Yeah, I want to thank Marty, Jeff, Fred, Marcy, and the whole team for responding to my requests, which might have been even more than Dr. Pickles at one point, but it was all in the spirit of, I think they realized that the ratepayers that I am concerned about are all the ratepayers. It's not just the poor, not just the wealthy, but the poor ratepayers do have some burdens in terms of our being able to reach out to them. So Marcy, Joe Ramallo has done a great job in improving that, and I look forward to more improvements in that. But I think he's done a phenomenal job just in my couple of years here in doing that, and I want to single him out. I think that there's some things, my takeaway is why isn't the rate, I have a concern that I think the rate RPA expressed, and I think it made its way into some literature as to why the rate increase isn't higher, and do the adjustment factors and metric adjustments that we're instilling, do those allow for adjustments if we need to make them? And there was a comment made by some people in the environmental community about stormwater capture, and I won't say it any more times than I need to say it, so I'll say it again. Stormwater is an asset and not a liability. And I hear from people like Jack Humphreyville and the neighborhood councils about spending what we make, spending within our means, spending money on infrastructure and making sure that we're getting the best price for ratepayers. But something, you can't put a price on resilience all the time. It's very difficult to price. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to be coming back to the ratepayers in the next few years for another increase, because it seems that one of the comments was that this seems to be the bare minimum. That seemed to be a theme. Also, what Andy Lipkiss said about the commitment that we're making to stormwater capture. But to conclude my comments on a more positive note, I think that it's a great step. We're making improvements, and we started a couple of years ago with a lot of things to do and a lot of things that I don't think Marcy Edwards gets a lot of credit for. She's done, and I've thanked you many times, but my mother always said, you know, you can never thank people enough or show gratitude. And you've put your, you know, your name out there, and your head on the line, and together with Chairman Levine, you've led the organization. So I would say it's a great first step. I'd like to see more. People know where I'd like to see more on the equity end of things. I will keep repeating that, but not in the context of this rate proceeding. People know where I'd like to see more, certainly on stormwater capture. And that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
And I'll add just brief comments. Virtually everything that I would say has been said by my colleagues. We owe an enormous amount of gratitude, particularly to the DWP staff and to those of you who went out into the community to the extent that you did. We also owe a debt of thanks to Dr. Pickle, who has really dug deeply and thoughtfully into these issues and has been very constructive in the process. My only additional substantive comment is that the risk of not passing this increase is certainly substantially greater than any risk of passing it. A variety of consequences have been outlined by both Dr. Pickle and Jeff. The potential for our bond ratings to drop so that our ratepayers would be punished by substantial additional interest payments on debt can't be overstated. The comparative cost of anticipating proactively to the extent we can the needs of improving the infrastructure versus waiting until accidents happen was very well spelled out in the UCLA example, and there are many other examples that underscore that. I think it's fair to say that in addition to the ratepayer advocate that we have in his position, we have 5 ratepayer advocates on this commission. Every one of us is doing all that we can to try to ensure that our ratepayers are treated fairly and equitably. And the idea of not enacting essentially this critically important increase poses much greater risk to the ratepayers than moving to enact it. So I want to echo the thanks that Commissioner Funderburk gave to our general manager, as well as to all of the rest of you who've been so instrumental in moving this process forward. Is there a motion to support this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Council, can you provide the magic words to recess us into closed session? We will return after closed session for agenda item 9.
President Levine,
Perhaps what we should do is, for clarity's sake, is there were 3 resolutions pending for consideration in that last matter, and perhaps just for clarity's sake, so the council is aware of, the city council is aware of what this board has done, we should clarify that.
So we have
Resolution
passed
A, B,
all
and C.
three.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, for closed session, the board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with section 54-957.1 of the California Government Code. Thank you.
Likewise,
We're recording?
In the future, you should do a couple items and then do closing.
We're recording. We are recording.
Nobody's that interested in us. They're walking out to lunch.
We are recording.
I'm going to put, discussion how.
We're recording.
Just say 7.
Meeting, please come back to order.
6 feet, too.
We will move to the one remaining item, the regular agenda, item number 9, agreement numbers 473-7286 and 473-7286 for customer information system support and upgrade services with YPro LLC and Oracle America, Inc.
We have come to the board in the past on a number of occasions explaining the need for continued service to provide remediation efforts to the CCP system that was not implemented as successfully as it should have been. I can go into more detail here, but we have covered this a number of times in the past, and I'd be happy to make a presentation or just respond to questions that the board may have.
Do any commissioners have any questions? Is there a motion?
Brief comment? Would help.
Yes.
We've reviewed the proposed contracts and had made comments on that we hope will improve task control. And we will work with Mr. Wright to understand as the tasks that are created through this contract move forward, so we understand how the spending's going. But we think these contracts are important to improve the agility of DWP's response to the evolving changes in the billing system.
Thank you. Did I hear a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. It's passed. I believe that leads us to our adjournment. So with that, we are adjourned.
Oh, thank you so much.